Hi, this is Joss Whedon, here to give you my little color commentary on the premiere of what would be the last season of Angel. It begins as the very first episode began with Angel in a dark alley saving a damsel in distress from a vampire. We did this deliberately because when we came into the fifth season, we really weren't sure if we were going to have a sixth. Later on in the season, we became confident that we would, which is the funny part. But at this time, we didn't know, and we really wanted to bookend. We really wanted to call back what the essence of the show was. And so we went back into the alley where we had started everything and where we so often found ourselves. And spent a little more time and energy on the fight to give a little grandeur, the big swing into the alley. It was a difficult thing to arrange, and trying to give it, that first episode pep. The first episodes are always difficult because, you have to start all over again, make people care, and bring in new people, and set up the premise. And here we set up the premise pretty specifically of what the show had always been, which is Angel is the kind of guy who goes into a dark alley, saves the woman, doesn't say what his name is, and takes off. However, this season, of course, is a little different, and is my favorite thing to do, subvert the obviousness of the genre. Since we had decided to have Angel working for Wolfram and Hart, we thought the best thing we could do to introduce that concept was to have Angel play the lone hero and then completely take it away from him. And this guy was wonderful. We used him again in a couple of different episodes. He did the Weasel Lawyer just perfectly. And David is extraordinarily good at playing bemused. So he was really funny in this. It was just the idea of, we are going to work for Wolfram and Hart, with the evil company we've fought all this time, and it very simply means we can't be what we were, and so all of his heroism is just falling by the wayside, and he's a little bit pathetic. It's a fun joke to play, but it's also completely on theme. This whole season was obviously a very different, very interesting journey for us because we had been through, a great deal of weird darkness, and both on the show and behind the scenes, trying to keep the show alive, and coming in with the idea of putting these guys in a completely new place, i.e. Wolfram and Hart, where they had power and they had money and they had influence and they had evil all around them, when they had just been going out and fighting in the dark for 4 years. Just made it really lively, and it also raised some of the hardest questions we had to ask. One of the stipulations from the network was that they wanted things to stand alone and be resolved, and so we have in this a little bit of something that is resolved with that child. That's a sort of X-Files standalone kind of story, and that was sort of our mission statement. Now, that mail cart represented the beginning of what will be about a 4.5 minute oneer. A Steadicam shot that just never stops. This is an interesting piece of work for a lot of reasons. Inevitably, one actor is always going to have trouble with their lines, and it's usually going to be the one who's at the end of the take, because that's just my fate. We had built this new set. Stuart, our production designer, had designed a gorgeous set with balcony and offices and everything interconnected, and a hallway that goes around and an elevator that opens on both sides, and The shot was designed partially to show it off and partially to introduce every single character and partially to, explain exactly what's going on. And here to set up the rivalry between Knox and Wesley over Fred, to set up a great many things. But what was really interesting about this, because it was great fun to go in and rehearse it and block it and, have the actors in the space and their energy. And, of course, Alexis and Amy, who anchor a great deal of it, are wonderful to work with. But about 2 weeks before we started shooting the very first episode, and this is the part that I find the most fascinating, Alexis came to me with the revelation that he had developed Bell's palsy on one side of his face, which meant that one side of his face was completely paralyzed. And he was rather worried at the time that it was going to remain completely paralyzed, but in fact it was getting better already by the time we started to shoot, but it was not really photographable. So I had to design a 6-page oneer that mostly revolved around the character of Wesley, and really only feature one side of his face whenever he was actually doing anything. So if you watch carefully, in this shot, we are constantly moving around Wesley, and yet he is very delicately dancing around us so that we are getting his right profile, or a 3/4 shot like that, almost the entire time. He only looks out fully when there's nothing for him to do. Notice the introduction of the Mexican wrestler, who will be showing up in a later episode by Jeff Bell. So notice also how the light is not on Wesley's face exactly. Here's, the one person who fits perfectly and really works in the Steadicam shot, Lorne, because, he's so in his element. He always wants to be on the move. He always wants to be making the deals. This is, what he was born to do. So it's interesting that he is the one person by the end of the season who has turned his back on this life more than any of them. So here we are, still in the same shot. We did 27 takes of this. Before we got one that went all the way through. There's always one thing. If the actors get everything right, the camera bumps into something. Something always goes wrong. But I think the shot worked out well. It was a nice dynamic opening, and it ends with the introduction of Sarah Thompson as Eve. Sarah's great. She's very sweet, very professional, and it was nice to put a face on Wolfram and Hart that wasn't, just completely evil. Obviously, she's not good. Her character has some complex layers, as we discover later, but what I wanted to do first off was just to say, look, evil is pretty, and sort of engaging, and set up a little chemistry between her and Angel. And literally say, you are cast out. The apple gag is very much, a joke on the name, but more importantly, it's saying you are going to go out of where the heroes are and into the dark place. See, that was as far as I could get on Wesley's face, and I would ask you to watch carefully at every single scene for the rest of the show, because you will never see more of that side of him unless it's in darkness. He is always played in profile, which was a really interesting challenge. It's always nice to have new challenges. And luckily, by the second episode, he was pretty much entirely okay. But this was a fun little game for the both of us. Where to block Wesley.
This is the catch.
It was interesting to try and develop, the reasons why Wolfram and Hart would ever have gotten Angel and his crew in there. And it's basically, something that we thought related to the real world, which is very simply when a powerful group sees something that they consider a threat, their first reaction might be to destroy it. Their second reaction would be to co-opt it. to bring it into the fold so that it can become sort of blended in and blander and less of a threat. And obviously, we talked about specific agendas, but ultimately, the question of why they would want Angel in there made perfect sense to us, because it would involve compromise. Compromise that, as we later see in the season, is almost embodied entirely by what happens with Jay, with Gunn. This scene was interesting to shoot not just because of Amy's legs, but because of arranging it in such a way that basically we only ever look in one direction. I shot into the office, and everybody, as you can see, it's almost like, there is no fourth wall. I never came around to shoot any of this, and that would be the obvious way to do it, go around the table. It would take longer. Something like this, first of all, it helps me with, yet again, Wesley's face. And I also have to give Alexis props for doing, the kind of beautiful textured acting that he did when he only had half a face to do it with. But shooting it this way, besides saving us a huge amount of time so that we could go and rehearse the oneer, which we did the day after this, you find you create frames that are a little more interesting than when you just shoot into people's faces across a table one after the other. I like profiles, and I like, I like the way Angel has the power in the room, and he's the only one really facing us. I like stacking people up and having them talk at each other without actually necessarily looking at each other. It's one of those things where, you use your time constrictions to create something that ultimately visually is just more interesting. And Ross Berryman, lights very beautifully. He lit this so fast because he had these offices with practicals that he allowed me an enormous amount of time. And more importantly, as things got tighter, since they did in fact lower our budget this season, we were able to do a lot more than we would have been because we had this space and Ross knew how to light it. And not just light it up as in put light on here. Obviously, he's doing something very specific, a little creepy, a little shadowy. Gunn is, hiding something from everybody else, and we're showing that visually. But Ross knew the space so well that he was able to give us frames that were, dynamic and visual in a really short amount of time. And we were able to shoot more footage without going over time. And when you're on as tight a budget as we are, making shows that are as complex as ours always are, you need that. So he was a real boon to us, as always. And Jay, of course, even a bigger change than anybody, with the hair. He was very excited. Can I have hair? Was his one request for this season. This obviously is the thing we saw in the mail card at the beginning of the show, and will come back to haunt Angel quite literally by the end of the show. I just like watching David in this. It makes me laugh. But the other big element, obviously, besides Jay's fabulous hair, was the decision to bring in recurring Mercedes McNabb as Harmony. Mercedes has worked for us for as long as I've worked on this show. She was in the presentation that we sold Buffy with. I think she was about 17 when we started. And she has been tirelessly funny and engaging and cooperative and sexy and delightful. And it was really nice to say, you know what, she's been in the periphery for too long. Why don't we bring her into the fold? She's just really funny and a charming person to work with. And she was long overdue to get in the mix. And she has, a bright energy and a comic timing that's very different from Amy's, and we needed a blonde, let's face it. So it all worked out for everybody. But she's also the sort of person that you end up writing scenes that are about 4 pages too long because you just love her voice. It's kind of like early Cordelia in its incredible, almost staggering shallowness. But with her, it's almost like a philosophy. She's not the kind of person who's going to grow and change, even though, we may become involved with her. And her typing, this little monologue, this whole thing, I think is just as nice a piece of comic acting as I've seen. She just, you can't, you sort of can't deny her, no matter how much Angel would like to. Every script, you have one line that's your favorite line. The extra ingredient is otter, happened to be mine. Really fell by the wayside, nobody really noticed it, but if you want to play trivia, that was my favorite line. This whole moment, designed to introduce the concept of the fact that Cordy is, for all intents and purposes, gone, but still very much in the hearts and minds of the people, and that's part of the weight they're bearing. Saving her was part of the deal that Angel made to, saving her from Connor was part of the deal that Angel made to come into Wolfram at Heart, which is something nobody knows. So, keeping her as part of the show and keeping true to the mythos of the show without weighing the show down with so much mythos that people couldn't watch it was the idea. Another tiny piece of trivia, Corbin Fries, that name is actually my nephew. And I thought it would be just hilarious to put him on the show and just go on and on about how he was the single worst human being alive. He actually turned out not to be nearly as amused by that as I was, but, well, you never know. Kids. Now, our villainous fellow, Rod Rowland, played him here, and he is an interesting piece of TV history for me because something that not a lot of people remember, there was a show called Space Above and Beyond, and he was one of the stars of it. And he did an episode that a few of us remember very well called Who Monitors the Birds, that was actually, I think, entirely silent. It was him having some flashbacks about he was a clone and being born into clone world and raised as a soldier, and while he's on a mission on a planet to kill some people, and they really did it silent. And when everybody said that I had invented that with Hush, I said, yes, I did. But actually, I had seen Who Monitors the Birds, is a very powerful episode that was pretty much just revolved around Rod, and was an overlooked little piece of TV. Obviously, it had also been done on The Twilight Zone with Agnes Moorehead, but I think that it was done beautifully in that show space, and never got his props. So it was fun to work with Rod because he had that cachet for me, and when he decided to go to Bad Guyville, he had no problem going there at all. Very different character.
We have top men on this.
And we're doing Jack.
Well,
That was the end of that last scene is, it's very difficult not to do every scene with something very important and then having Harmony not get it. In fact, I had to cut a couple out. This is something else that really is a bit of a steal for me. It has a resonance that I can't describe, which is it's from Fear, Anxiety, and Depression, Todd Solondz' first movie that isn't available anywhere. And it did have a woman singing that. The song is actually from The Pajama Game with Doris Day, but I loved that scene, and that song always stuck in my head, so I used it here. Something else that has a great deal of resonance for me, obviously, is the poster that Fred is about to put up. Not just because of the political controversy that the Dixie Chicks had caused just before we shot this, although that had a lot to do with it, and not just because of the fact that I'm a huge fan of theirs. If you look inside the CD of that album, there's just a sign that they had photographed on a storefront. It just says, "We are changing the way we do business." And that phrase just had great resonance for me. So for some reason, they just felt just right. When Fred is thinking she's weak, that she would put up a poster that, to me, represented the exact kind of strength I was talking about. Now, that last shot through the window, that's one of the things where, all of the other writers on the staff, we had Ben Edlund, David Fury, Jeff Bell, Steve DeKnight, they all directed episodes, and every single one of them was like, I was going to do the shot through the window at the beginning of the thing. And they were all jealous that I got to get to this office first. But I, quite frankly, was jealous that I couldn't shoot more episodes because it was so beautifully designed. You just wanted to shoot through everything. You wanted to shoot through the stairs. It's a space that it's very hard to get tired of visually as a director, and that's, again, part of the genius of how it was designed. The inevitable reference to a famous person that was the staple of Lauren's character. The easy fallback joke. I'm not proud.
Freelance men.
I do actually refer to that shot as my Michael Bay moment. I don't particularly tend to fetishize cars myself, but I think we made it fairly clear in the show that Angel does. And when he has his little breakdown and he loves all his cars so much and can't choose between them, it's one of my favorite Angel character moments. Of course, most of those cars we couldn't drive, so we had to choose carefully, but they are pretty.
Additionally,
This we shot in the actual garage in Paramount, but which is open up. There is no elevator going down into it. We just used the light effect to set up the idea that Angel went straight down to his carpool with his necro-tempered car glass. So I guess we should probably talk about Spanky. I'm really not sure how to tell you where Spanky came from. He just seemed like an interesting guy to talk to. Angel has gotten information from a lot of demons, a lot of characters over time, and I'm really trying to remember where I came up with Spanky. I have to tell you, I swear it's not from my personal life, but I just was charmed by the notion. And it also represents, well, a different kind of person, a different kind of evil. It's not evil. There's nothing wrong with spanking. All you spankers out there, God bless. Nothing wrong with it. But I do think it just means Angel's sort of a little bit out of his depth. Now they start talking about a lot of what we refer to as phlebotinum. Phlebotinum being the mystical MacGuffin, the mystical device or problem that they have to solve. I would say the weakest thing about the script is that we never really get a visceral sense of what the mystical MacGuffin really is or can do. It's not really connected to the story of what they're going through. It was just a device by which we could set up the heart of the show, which was very simply their very first problem is get somebody who's evil off, because that's what their firm does. And so when I looked back on it, the idea, we called the show Conviction because, it was a little pun because there's talk of conviction later on and they're trying to avoid a conviction. So there was a little something with that, but it's really also about the fact that they're losing theirs. But to get there had to be a mystical box with a thing and a thing. And I don't think that was my most impressive. That line, however, works just fine for me. What we did with Jay here was also a result of sort of, the show inevitably, as they do as the years go on, following the reality of making the show. And the reality of making the show was we often didn't know what to do with Jay's character. His relationship with Fred had come and gone because happy relationships make for boring TV, at least in my world. And, he had a real sort of sense of feeling out of place. And so, much as we did with Fred later, making her Illyria, I wanted to show something from Jay that people hadn't really seen. I also knew how good he looked in a suit. So we decided to solve that problem by arranging his character completely differently. Got to give a little shout out here to Jonathan Woodward, who is one of our famous hat tricks. A hat trick is anybody who has appeared on Buffy, Angel, and Firefly. Jonathan has the distinction of having appeared as a perfectly nice guy who is then evil and dies on all three. In the other two, it was in the course of one episode. On Angel, we kept him around a great deal longer. A very, very charming guy, really good actor, and can play, sort of insouciantly evil better than almost anybody.
You all built.
And he, more than anybody on the show, represents the person who lives in a moral vacuum, who allows himself to be a part of something terrible because he's more interested in the numbers and in his life than in actually the larger ramifications of what he's doing. Angel there, by the way, is talking on a phone made entirely of rubber and glue. We had a gag where he squeezed the phone so hard that it broke. It doesn't really work, so we cut it out. The phones we made didn't really squeeze that well. It's a hard thing to ask.
Slowly. You want to stop?
We finished?
Not quite yet.
Then shut up and do it.
You got anything, Fred?
I'm not sure. We've isolated a few strains which Fries may have had access to.
This was also a case of I get to be the first guy to shoot on the balcony, but more importantly, to play the largeness of the space and their smallness within it and the inability that they would have to overcome it. To play them like, the children lost in the woods.
Back to our respective grindstones, I guess.
Now, Wesley's going to turn and show us the other side of his face in this scene. Very exciting. But we've lit accordingly, as you can see.
Personally.
Probably this place gets to you.
Just the hard angles and the lines and the diagonals of that staircase. It, again, really, it helps with their being trapped. And if you have gone ahead and seen the episode I wrote called A Hole in the World, that particular part of the staircase is used very specifically for that purpose. Now, the idea of my MacGuffin, which I referred to as fairly weak, being the man implanting a virus in his son, was solely so that we could make it relate to Angel personally. Connor, like Cordelia, was somebody from the show that wasn't on it anymore, that we wanted to refer to and show his feelings about his son and about the way this guy is treating his son, and about his pain, and about the fact that he lied to everybody around him, and that they don't even know Connor exists, which comes into play a bit later on.
Newsflash, you're not cute when I'm angry.
Just curious how you're gonna play it.
I'll isolate the boy, if it comes to that. Stop it from spreading.
Here's the news from this sector. If every case hits you this hard, you're not gonna last a week.
Now, I don't want you coming into my office again unless I ask for you. I don't want to hear another word right now unless you decide to start helping out.
How do you know I'm not?
Pictures of diseases, always fun, and Chinese food, they go together. This was really, that's an insert we got later, like this. Again, and it's as in an attempt to make it more visceral, to make the idea of it something more than just an idea, so that there was some tension in it.
Are you sure?
Couple more tests.
This is a place where traditionally you would have gone in for closes. I just thought I like oneers. I like two actors working together in a frame rather than isolating them. The scene shows that Fred is in fact very good at leading, that she's got a good drill sergeant mentality, and just when you think she's going to be sweet, she's going to turn on you, which is, the toughness you need in a leader. Sort of her arc for this episode.
Eye sockets and fingernails, I'll have the intense satisfaction of knowing that I'm dying with the only people in the world that actually deserve it. Now focus, people. Work the damn problem.
This moment where we see his reflection looking at her before we go down to him. A lot of people were pretty impressed by my filmmaking right there. It actually was a totally happy accident. I had no intention of photographing his reflection. It just landed exactly where she was. But if you guys could keep that to yourselves, that'd be really cool. And just tell everybody that I'm awesome. That's just the thing. You could tell them that.
How long ago?
Little mini arc here is very simply that Harmony, because she's one of them and not one of us, she has insight that is actually useful. She gets to be part of the team from the beginning. This was my first courtroom scene. Very exciting to shoot because I never got to shoot in a courtroom before. And as a insane Law and Order fan, I had a very nice time. Of course, we went to probably the same courtroom that's been shot for a dozen shows, actually hundreds. But it was it was just very interesting and fun to go there when you've seen so many. The other specific ideas behind this was very simply that Angel isn't fighting the bighorn demon at all. That, the evil he faces has a human face.
So it turns out.
Take him out.
That was a classic example of a wire gag that looks like a wire gag, but a lot of this plays nicely. It was a fun fight to do because it had a slightly different energy than the usual bunch of guys. And the fact that while Angel is sort of dealing with the bad guys, this guy is actually solving the problem. And here we finally get to see the gun makeover and get to see a side of Jay that, as I said, he never got to show that much. He is slick. He is very articulate. And when we came in and he had a bunch of stuff to, a bunch of legal jargon to throw out, he nailed it. He was so at ease in this role. It was delightful to watch. Interestingly enough, to write, I originally was going to write, gun enters, blah, 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 some legal thing, blah, 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 some legal thing, and have somebody who actually knows some legal thing come up with it. But I got into the scene, and I just started to write it, and, I just made stuff up, as I always do. And I'm happy to say that when we sent the script to a legal consultant, they had changed a few words, they changed a few phrases and a couple of points of order, but not only did the scene play for them, but they actually thought the law that he cites was a real one.
The defense admits it has learned how to
And that made me very proud of me. That was my one moment of writing what I call grown-up television, where people actually have to know facts, and not just have emotions and superpowers and things, but actually have to know how the world works, which is something that I don't. But I found out that I don't have to know how the world works if I can make it up convincingly enough. So that was nice for me, because I don't know anything about the law, except that the judge sits there, the jury's on the right, and the guy in the pinstripe suit is a bad guy.
I'm honestly
This is, another very important moment where we get
Come into Wolfram heart and make everything
to hear
her night in the glorious day. You
exactly what the issues are
You're minuscule.
and what I truly believe, which is that people who are desperate and evil have a thing that people who live normal, decent lives don't have, which is conviction.
I believe.
Which is absolute belief in themselves and their way. It's what makes radical fringe people truly dangerous, because they can't see the other side. And my response to that in the show is two-edged.
Conviction.
And that is, A, that it is possible to be a decent human being, and B, that Angel is not going to take any of this lightly. He went all Punisher in that moment. It's not something I necessarily agree with. But as a response to what's going on, I wanted to say very specifically, Angel is going to take these people down on their own terms. It's something that for hero fiction, I think, works beautifully to be as tough as that. In real life, let's just say I think it belongs in fiction. Possibly my favorite through line of the entire season, the Gilbert and Sullivan.
Give him a little.
Jay singing Three Little Maids from School is still one of the highlights of American television. I had one disappointment in shooting the first episode. It's always fun to get the gang back together. My one disappointment was that I didn't get to work with James Marsters. I wanted to earn his return, the return of Spike. It was very important to me after his death on Buffy that his return not be a simple thing, and that we start Angel with the Angel crew, show the problem, show their various ways of dealing with it, and then set up the new wrinkle in the mix, which would be Spike. And so that meant that, his big first episode got to be shot by somebody else, and I don't think that's fair. And it was basically James got up, he went rawr, and I was like, good work, James, great working with you again, bye. I did get to work with him on A Hole in the World, but in this instance, it was not fair. Because the energy he brought with him to this cast and to this set was priceless in our fifth season. James treats every season like it's his first job ever, and he makes everybody else as funny and as hardworking as they can be. That's pretty much all I have to say for now. Thanks a lot for watching and listening to me talk and talk and talk. Goodbye for now.
Grr, arg.